Good evening, everyone. I welcome you to the City of Colwood Planning and Land Use meeting for Monday, March 3rd. We acknowledge with respect that we are meeting on the traditional territory of the Lekwungen-speaking peoples, the people of the Songhees and Kisepsan nations, and we're honored to have the opportunity to build strong working relationships with them. Call the meeting to order and seek item 2, approval of the agenda. Planning and Land Use Committee meeting agenda for March 3rd, 2025. If I could have a mover. Thank you. All those in favor? Okay, moving on. Looking for item 3, adoption of the minutes from the Planning and Land Use Committee meeting of January 6th, 2025. If I could have a mover for that adoption, please. Thank you. Any opposed? Didn't catch anybody. Look at that. Well done. Okay, unanimous. So moving on, the first item would be an opportunity for public participation. Members of the public have 2 minutes, and if they seek additional time, they can certainly ask, and the council can, or the committee can vote on an additional 2-minute time slot. You have the opportunity to speak now at this juncture, or you can wait for a particular item on the agenda. So I would just seek a show of hands for anyone in the gallery who wants to wait to speak to any particular item. I see a couple. I see several. Only at one point, correct. Yeah. Unfortunately, that's not how we would do it. It would be either at this point now or before either item 5.1 or 5.2. Tim, I don't know if you want to wait until a particular item or if you want to speak now. Okay, thank you. Is there anyone who does wish to speak right now, just for clarity? Okay, seeing nobody, we will move on to the first item on the agenda. Under new business, item 5.1, Desiree Givens will be speaking to motion to rescind the January 6th Planning Land Use Committee recommendation. Desiree.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So staff are here tonight requesting that the Planning and Land Use Committee rescind its January 6th Planning and Land Use Committee recommendation to Council. At the previous meeting, the committee raised some valid concerns about how the Gateway and Triangle Lands Vision and Action Plan align with the housing needs assessment from that was adopted by Council in December 2024, as well as the work to align the city's housing targets with the official community plan and the land use bylaw. Staff agree with the committee that the integration of the Gateway Vision and Action Plan should be carefully considered alongside this work required by the province to align future land use with housing needs. Therefore, we're requesting that the committee consider rescinding its January 6th Planning and Land Use Committee meeting recommendation. What this would mean is that the bylaw 1700-11 would not move forward for bylaw readings at this time. Instead, staff would revisit the amending bylaw to see where there's alignment with housing needs assessment and the guidance documents from the province, as well as the work that is underway by the Development Services Department to align zoning bylaw, OCP, and housing needs assessment. Thank you for your time. I'm happy to answer any questions that you might have.
Thank you, Desiree. I'll go to the committee for any questions. Councillor Jansen.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. From staff, I mean, is this part and parcel to the discussion we had last Monday night as far as the work that's to happen in this next year? Bring it all together in one bundle?
Thank you, Councillor Jansen, and through the chair, yes, that is correct. That would be part of that project plan that was presented on the February 24th meeting.
Because it's unusual that we take a step backwards on something like this, but understanding the discussion from last Monday, I mean, it makes sense. Thank you.
Thank you. I look to the committee to see if there's any other questions. Anyone at this time? Oh, I do see Mr. Perry.
I confess to have not made myself privy to the conversation that happened. I am certainly curious as to what detriments are in front of us if we were to carry forward, adopt the vision as it presented, and then amend it later? What's the primary motivation for detracting it entirely before putting forward something more fulsome?
Um, Thank you, Councilmember Perry. So maybe I will explain a little bit more of the context. So the amending by law that was being put forward to council would append the vision as an appendix. But what we want to look at the development of the Gateway Plan began in 2021. So it is going into a 4-year-old document. And in that interim period, there has been a lot of changes to the legislation, and specifically the transit-oriented areas that have been designated by the province. So to have this document, we need to now have a very good look at how this document overlaps with properties that have an entitlement of density and height, and no parking requirements. And to do that more wholesomely, we need to come back with design guidelines that it needs to be a more wholesome package that really looks at development from not just density and height, but how to regulate the form and feel of those areas. And there's some very good insights in the Gateway Plan that will hold true because it's principles of good planning, but that there are other premises that are almost superseded by provincial regulations. We also received on January 10th a letter from the province making us aware that there's more work that needed to be done to comply with Bill 44. So that gave us the impetus to look at our regulations in a more wholesome manner. Like there's an opening for us to do this work and meet a December 31st deadline for this year, but looking at the gateway as part and parcel of Bill 44 and what those new regulations mean for our downtown core, or like the core of the city of Colwood.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Yasmin. Thank you, Mr. Perry. Certainly, as noted, I mean, Councillor Jansen and I have the benefit of the last council meeting and the context. As Yasmin suggested, there's a lot of changes that have happened with Bill 44 and Bill 47 in particular, which governs these transit-oriented development areas, and what that means for us, and our only transit-oriented development area at present, which is that area around kind of West Shore Parks and Rec and the Gateway. So as Councillor Jansen stated, generally we wouldn't kind of take a step back, but I think in this case, it's the prudent thing to do. I certainly will support this motion. In fact, I'll take the liberty of moving the recommendation and look to see if there's any further comment on that. I'll call the vote then. All those opposed? Seeing none, it's unanimous. Thank you, Desiree and Yasmin. We will move on to item 5.2, but prior to that, we know we've got interest in public participation. So again, a reminder, please come up to the podium, just press the little silver button on the microphone, and you have 2 minutes, and our staff will start the timer when you're ready. So whoever would like to come up first, please feel free.
Good evening, councilpersons, committee members, members of the public and staff. And I thank you for giving me this time to speak. My name's, excuse me, Chris Trops. I live at 526 Bezanton Way. I'm not actually here to oppose the development North Latoria Visioning Project. I just was not able to attend any of the pop-ups or do the survey. I am a concerned resident, and my issue is actually the exit of Bezanton Way, which I know is going to be part of the whole process. And if I could use my hands just to demonstrate, right now Bezanton Way is on this side of a hump. So basically there's a blind spot because Latoria comes up. So there's 2 blind spots. There's a blind spot here and there's one coming up. the way that the intersection is designed, you have to pull forward to actually pass the crosswalk. And then if you have somebody on this side, they're actually blocking you and the traffic is coming up quite fast. It is quite dangerous. I would like to see some kind of an interim measure, whether it's to control the speed, signage, or whatever. It's just not safe. Something's gonna happen. Whether somebody's gonna get T-boned because the cars are literally coming too fast. Like even I admit, I come up from Quality Foods and I easily exceed the speed limit and I slow down. So, and I'm having people tailgating me. So it's a safety issue. In the long term, I would not like to see two laning, because when you have two laning traffic, there's always somebody that's gonna wanna go past somebody else. I would like to code to consider the Langford Parkway example, single lane roundabouts. It naturally slows the speed down. That's my main point. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate your feedback. Next, anyone looking to speak at public participation?
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair Committee. My name is Rachel Sansom, and I'm representing the 3 development groups that are putting in proposals for this corridor. Hopefully I'll get this done in 2 minutes. We'll be coming before you in the coming months with several very exciting, we think, proposals for these lands that we trust is in alignment with what the public have identified as their concerns. Just a quick note about the plans shown in the package. Those are very preliminary. Some of what you'll see come before you is going to be a little bit different. But it will be in keeping with what we've been working on so far. We've been working in this area, some as long as 15 years, some as much as 5 and 4 years. So again, we're looking forward to the local area plan being our guiding document. Certainly a huge component is environmental protection, the protection of and improvements to Latoria Creek. We met with our biologist and landscape coordinator this morning to talk about how this creek can be brought back to life. It's not in great condition now. It's essentially a roadside ditch, and we'll be working to bring that back to its natural state in accordance with riparian area and Water Sustainability Act regulations. So that's a really big part of this, because we have several water courses that not only Latoria Creek, but Havenwood Creek and other tributaries. So those are going to be a big part of our plans. We are going to be addressing pretty much all the components of your housing needs assessment as far as affordability, rentals, accessibility, age in place, and as well as lots of opportunity for alternative transportation. We also will be wanting to incorporate commercial and retail, office space, medical in most of these developments, so we can look forward to that. The amenities that we are bringing in again will be the affordability, the different kinds of housing, the public spaces, the environmental upgrades, and traffic improvements, which will include addressing the Pleasanton intersection as well as Latoria Road. Whatever staff require for those improvements will either be built or in the DCC program. There was more. I'll let Todd finish it.
Thank you, Rachel. Appreciate it. Is there anyone who would like to go next?
I'll try. I have no hope with your Tim Day, Charlie Place, no hope with a 2-minute thing. So if I'm allowed, I'll ignore it and I'll try and carry on.
Well,
Or do
we'll
I-
stop at 2 minutes and see if we can get consent to
Okay.
carry on. I would like to try to keep it to the 4 minutes if we can,
Right.
Tim.
Yeah. I wrote a letter, and to make it quicker, I think everyone has a copy of the letter, and if I could just skip through it as quickly as I could. This is all about Latoria Valley and about, I'll just read it. Under new provincial legislation, Colwood is tasked with providing a total of 940 units of housing over the 5-year plan. Over the last 2 years, Colwood has added 600 units per year in new sewer connections, and council has already approved development far in excess of Colwood's sewer allocation in the CRD wastewater treatment plant. And I just put the copy there. Colwood is not short of approved new housing units. Colwood growth is limited by capacity at the CRD water treatment plant. Colwood will reach its maximum allocation in less than 5 years at the present development rate. And the next page goes on to a public open house where people decided where they thought that urban centers were. And you can see that no one shares staff urban center at Latoria and VMP. The next one is how people leave Royal Bay. And it's a traffic map that shows you that people either go up Chosen Road or go up Cairndale to VMP. So any improvements that are made to VMP or Latoria are a complete waste of time and money, not to mention difficulty. And then I go to the next one, which is a schedule of again, another staff initiative of drawing these areas of this urban center at Latoria and VMP that's bigger than downtown Galwood, where you'd want development. And it's just not reasonable. I don't know what it is. It's supposed to be a walking distance, but
I'll allow you just to summarize, Tim, if you want to, you're halfway through.
I am halfway through. Okay, it's not a transit growth area. It won't be. And doesn't matter how many houses they try to build there, apartment buildings. It's never going to be a commercial center. And then I included the Thurber report to give you an idea of some of the serious problems of working with the land next to the Wishart Latoria intersection. And then the last one is staff, again, I will call this one an uninitiative. $100,000 was put aside for inland floodplain mapping, of which none of it has been spent, and all this development is in a floodplain. So shouldn't you know where the floodplains are before you start planning development in them? And just one last quick point I want to make is that it says in your report from staff that this plan has been presented to this version of the land use concept was presented to council and the planning and land use committee before being presented to public for feedback. Well, that's untrue. The first time this plan was ever released was the night, well, the first plan was the night of when they had all the rezonings with all the zeros on them. They were just posted before the meeting, where this one was just posted before the previous meeting where it was scheduled to be seen. This is not something that's been presented at any public meeting, and this version is the first time it's appearing anywhere. Thank you.
Thank you, Tim. Next speaker, Councillor Day.
Thank you. I just wanted to there we go. I just wanted to speak to the issue that I think is most critical to our community, which is affordability. So the area that all of this development would take place in on the north side of Latoria Road is all greenfield development right now. A good portion of it is very difficult to develop because of the floodplain, the peat bog, and the environmental concerns with the creek. The area is a very diverse bio-ecosystem. There are regularly eagles and owls and mink in the area. I do see them often. I live on the back side, if you will, overlooking the trees, which are still present after some of them are 75 years old. So you may see them as a little fuzzy green patch in the background, but there is a very viable ecosystem and there is some very critical drainage infrastructure in that area. And all of that means that development of this area for high rises and more density is more likely to be expensive because of the ground conditions that it's built on. So I just wanted to bring that to your attention, that not only is it a biodiverse area with a very healthy functioning ecosystem, there are lots of trout and things in that waterway, but it is also very difficult and expensive to build on. Thanks.
Thank you.
So just press the mic 2 minutes starts.
So you're on already there.
Okay. So good evening, Planning Committee. My name is Todd Mazouk. I represent ownership of properties from 554 all the way through to the traffic circle. So there's a number of, I think, 7 properties total. Staff and council that are here as well. Just a couple points. One of the interesting things that has happened over the past 4 years of us trying to achieve rezoning, and we're happy with, I think, some of the work of staff to look at this planning of these properties more wholesome or more village style, has happened in the last year. And that's because the 3 property owners are working together collectively with one voice, and staff has received that information well. I think one of the concerns that we do have is the height of the buildings and the restrictions around talking about height of buildings. One of the things that we had been committed to for years is 6+ story buildings. We build concrete and steel buildings. We do not build wooden buildings, mainly because of the obvious fire risk and concerns. But we also are looking to build higher than 6 floors because that's the part of the building value that starts to turn the economy into being able to afford the amenities and the low income housing that is also asked of us through amenities. So I think that's a really important thing. I'll point out that there were 6 people out of, I think, 50 in the poll that was done over the 3 sessions this summer that were restrictive. So 20% roughly of the people that were polled considered height to be an issue. I don't think we're also talking much higher than 8 stories. So we're not talking massively high, but the benefits of building with concrete and steel offer you those extra floors with that extra economics that does provide for a wide range of opportunity. Some of that opportunity that we are looking at is age in place or 55+. So a part of our village. You want me to continue or?
I'll let you continue on here.
Okay.
For 2 more minutes.
So part of our village concept is to provide doctors. So we have a number of CRU spaces, commercial spaces planned, working to bring doctors into the community. One of our affordable measures is for those staff, locums and nurses that work in those programs will get discounted rents. So there's a real ambition and desire for amongst our developing group to think about children and play areas and pathways and working with biologists and really true forestry engineers that understand how Colwood Creek or Latoria Creek, sorry, is performing. And that's part of what we do on a regular weekly basis. We were meeting them this morning, and we've chosen our lead biologist to be from WSP, which has a correlation to the study work that the city of Colwood has also spent their own good hard-earned money on, our taxpayer money. And so I think the point I would make to you is there has been a real push for the developing ownership to work with city staff and council and planning committee at this stage to convey that we are interested in more village style development. This is not a single unit. We've also done the geotechnical engineering, at least on our properties. I won't speak for others, but from 554, 546 going towards the traffic circle, we believe that everything we're building is on rock. And to address this gentleman's concern, we've already started the TIA and some of the engineering discussions with the engineering department that there will be a full signalized intersection in our belief at Byzantin to help manage that intersection issue. And we also concur that we believe it should be a 3-lane road with potentially some right-ins and right-outs. But we actually believe that by lowering or reducing the amount of lanes will also allow for more pathway integration with some of the riparian zones that will allow for a 3-meter potentially wide trail that could be used for bikers, walkers, and also have greater access to some of the development to create that hub of village type style development, which can be everything from amenity spaces along those trails and places to sit, but also encourage people to come into those communities. We also have developed a number of spaces, such as there's 3 daycares that are involved in these communities. So we really are thinking holistically, everything in full age from old to young. And I think I would leave it with one final comment. There is a bit of a twist that we didn't see coming tonight, and that was some language that was involved in an economic evaluation. So we're also interested in being a participant of that. Is part of the stepping stone for us to get rezoning, which is a bit of a surprise to us. So we'd like to have someone communicate to us what that's about. So the language is disconcerting the way we see it here. So we obviously have been putting a lot of financial effort into the ownership and engineering and planning costs to get to this point. So we're just trying to understand what that means. Thank you for your extra time. Appreciate it.
Thank you. And during staff presentation, I'm sure we'll hear in detail any changes to the plan. Are there any other individuals seeking to speak during public participation? I see none. Just for clarity, normally we do have the 2 minutes and then there is a mechanism to allow 2 additional. I was a little bit flexible with that tonight because I take my cue from our mayor who, as we all know in council meetings, wants to hear from the public, as do I. And I think as does the committee. I don't think an extra 4 or 5 minutes out of our time is too much to ask to hear from people in the community. I think it's valuable. So that's why I took a little leeway there to hear from a couple folks a little bit longer. So with, I see one gentleman who isn't there. Is there anyone else for public participation? Last call? No, okay. Moving on then, we will then look at item 5.2. Desiree, I believe, is going to speak to us on the North Latoria Visioning Project update and the staff recommendation.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So we are here tonight to provide an update on the North Latoria Visioning Project, present the engagement results, and share the revised land use concept, and seek a recommendation from the committee on next steps. Next slide, please. So there's the agenda for tonight, summarizing what I just shared. Next slide, please. So the North Latoria corridor area encompasses 13 privately owned properties as shown on this slide. The visioning exercise began in early 2022 in response to a high volume of rezoning inquiries that the city received from various property owners in the corridor, and the need to think more holistically about the area as a whole as opposed to guiding development on a parcel by parcel basis. The purpose of the visioning exercise was to create a unified, cohesive vision and plan for the area that could, 1, ensure that the community's priorities guided growth in the area, 2, provide exceptional protection of the area's natural assets, 3, consider the necessary transportation and other infrastructure improvements, and 4, secure neighborhood enhancements and desired community amenities and benefits. We have now concluded the first 2 phases of the project, which involved reviewing the city's existing plans, policies, and council resolutions impacting the area, as well as developing and exploring conceptual land use options through conversations with council, stakeholders, and the general public. Next slide, please. The engagement process for the project second phase involved a few different initiatives. In total, we held 4 events to speak with members of the public about a conceptual land use plan or land use concept for the North Latoria corridor. We took advantage of existing community events happening in the city, such as the Eats and Beats event at the Beachlands in late July and a Music in the Park event at Herm Williams Park in late August. In September, we also held 2 pop-up events, including one at Red Barn Market on Saturday, September 7th, as well as a street party in the local neighborhood on September 14th. In addition to these in-person events, we also posted information on the Let's Talk Colwood project page and launched a survey which was available in person at City Hall or online through Let's Talk Colwood from August 7th through September 14th. Promotion for these events included the city's social media platforms, a dedicated project webpage, advertisements in the Goldstream Gazette, as well as mail-out packages that were distributed to surrounding properties in the study area. Looking at participation by the numbers, 62 surveys were filled out in total during this second phase of the project, and more than 250 people attended the in-person events. We also received a total of 257 open-ended comments on the land use concept and 304 sticky dot votes. Importantly, nearly all of the respondents indicated that they'd like to see community leisure space provided within the North Latoria corridor area. Next slide, please. In terms of the engagement format, for the in-person events, poster boards were presented to provide the community with an update on the project, seek their feedback on the draft land use concept. The boards presented information about the overall project process, the status of the project, road options that had been explored by city staff and stakeholders, as well as a land use concept that is shown on the right side of the slide here. Feedback boards were also provided for the community to share their priorities through a democracy exercise in which respondents provide or voted on their preferred types of housing as well as social amenities by adding sticky dots to the feedback boards. These same questions were asked within the survey, along with a few additional questions to specifically ask what respondents liked most about the land use concept and what they liked the least. Next slide, please. So this is the previous version of the land use concept that was presented to the public and stakeholders. It envisioned a new public road being added at the northwest corner of the study area off Veterans Memorial Parkway to provide access to the western properties, as well as a new public road being extended from off of Byzantine Road to provide access for the eastern properties. The land use concept also mapped out the environmentally significant features of the lands, including all major water courses and their protected buffers, as well as any significant clusters of trees, mature tree canopy, in order to help identify specific areas that should be protected from development. So on the west side, the concept had envisioned a mixed-use hub consisting of residential, commercial, and institutional mixed-use buildings ranging in height from 5 to 8 stories. And on the east side, the concept considered a multifamily hub with apartments or townhomes ranging in height from 3 to 6 stories. This version of the land use concept was shared widely with stakeholders and the public, and the next few slides will highlight the key themes, priorities, and concerns that we heard. So with respect to community priorities, the following themes emerged across all engagement activities, including a desire for social amenities to be provided, such as trails, sidewalks, parks, community leisure spaces, and commercial opportunities. There was also an interest to see diverse housing offerings, for example, units with 3 or more bedrooms, large enough to accommodate families, and affordable housing to be provided. We also heard that an interest in prioritizing the environmental stewardship of the lands, including retaining and preserving existing mature tree canopy within the corridor, as well as the protection of the Latoria and North Latoria creeks. In terms of the major concerns that came across, there were 2 main concerns next slide, please. 2 main concerns that came out of the engagement. Number 1 was impacts on transportation, specifically a concern about the potential for increased traffic and congestion on Latoria Road due to the redevelopment of the lands, as well as a desire to see a 4-way stop or some other treatment at the intersection of Byzantine and Latoria. The other concern that came out was community character, so specifically the sentiment that 6 to 8 stories might be too dense for the neighborhood, and a desire to see this area better integrated into the existing community character, and for additional amenities to be provided to accommodate the new residents. Next slide, please. Following the conclusion of the community engagement, staff revisited the land use concept and revised it in response to the feedback that we've received. The revised land use concept is presented here, whereas the previous land use concept showed up to 8 stories on the west and up to 6 stories on the east. The revised land use concept supports between 4 to 6 stories across the entire area. This aligns more closely with the existing policy direction for these properties that are outlined in the OCP, and can support a more gentle integration into the current feel of the community. Next slide, please. So staff are seeking direction or a recommendation to council to move forward with the creation of a local area plan to guide future development of the lands in accordance with this revised land use concept. As part of the next phase of work, we will be seeking the support of a land economic specialist to vet this land concept and ensure that it is economically viable based on the desired outcomes expressed by the community. Further, if we decide to move forward with a density bonusing framework, we have learned that the province does require local governments to prepare a financial feasibility analysis as part of this consideration. Some other options for council's consideration are to move forward with the staff recommendation with revisions as expressed by Planning and Land Use Committee or Council. Option 3 would be to maintain the existing land use direct policy directions for the area and not endorse the land use concept presented tonight. This would allow the existing rezoning applications to move forward under the existing land use designation of neighborhood hillside. And then option 4 would be to defer the decision and request that staff provide additional information. And that is it for me. Thank you. I'm happy to answer any questions that you might have.
Thank you, Desiree. Appreciate that. Usually I'd wait, but I just want to start off, and maybe Marcy, we could go back to the slide, the land use concept revised there. I think, I may not be the only one in the room with some questions. So I'm hoping maybe you could give us a little bit more context on this slide. What has changed, specifically from the initial concept that we saw rolled out at the public engagement session, for example, the barbecue there, to this version. I obviously had time to review it outside of this meeting, but I think for other folks, there seem to be questions as to, okay, what's changed and the reasoning behind them. So maybe I could ask staff to expand a little bit on that.
Yes, absolutely. And thank you, Councillor Ward. So the main changes are we did remove the building footprints that were shown in the previous land use concept because we understand that this is conceptual and the final building footprints will be determined by when rezoning applications come in. So to not get tied to a specific location of where the buildings are going to be located, we've just more broadly just highlighted what types of density and height would be permitted. So that would only be so between 4 to 6 stories and floor area ratio of 2.5. The other change you'll see is the road network. So before we were showing a road alignment from connecting at the northwest corner of the site off of Veterans Memorial Parkway down to Latoria. Again, that road alignment had not been completely vetted out. So we've reverted back to the concept that had been explored by staff, just showing a cul-de-sac at that northwest corner. And then same with the Byzantine Way extension, because we only know conceptually what the what the internal roads might look like. We've reverted back to just showing a cul-de-sac, and these details will be finalized as we process the rezoning applications and learn more what's actually feasible. So the next phase of the project will be really making sure that we're exploring the technical aspects of this to move it forward. So it's more conceptual in nature, I guess, is the main change that we've gone to, and we've reduced the heights from 5 to 8 stories down to 4 to 6.
Great, thank you for that.
May-
Yasmin, did you want to expand on that?
I think maybe I will expand a little bit about the concept of the cul-de-sacs for these public roads. What we heard loud and clear through the engagement was a desire from the community to retain as much of the existing tree canopy and the natural features of the land. The more road that we use to carve the lots, the less opportunity there is for retention of the existing features. And the development potential of the lands is what enables enhancement of what remains. So it was striking a balance between creating buildable spaces within private property and understanding the constraints of riparian regulations and the buffers from existing riparian features, the existing tree canopies. And when we map all of that out, the least public road we create that is still good enough to service the lots, that we believe that is the proposal that best suits the priorities that we heard from the community of tree retention, enhancement of the existing features, while recognizing that these lands are being redeveloped, that there's enough interest in the property owners to do something beyond the single family homes that are there. So it's striking the right balance to enable development to take place and identifying the features that are most valuable for the community. And we believe these minimizing of the public road and doing cul-de-sacs would enable the plan as a whole to retain the most natural features.
Thank you, appreciate that. I'll leave my questions there for the moment. I just wanted to get the map up there. I look to the committee for questions. Councillor Jansen.
Thank you. A few things I made a note of. I think I know the answer to some of these, but I'll ask anyways. Will this area plan come with design guidelines for that area? Or will we be just defaulting to our standard design guideline bylaw? Like how deep did we go with the planning process or the planning exercise in this area?
Thank you, Councillor Jansen, and through the chair. At this time, we weren't considering this, including design guidelines for the area, but if that is something that committee and council desires, then certainly we can look at that as part of the next scope of work.
I don't think I want to insert that into this because I don't want to complicate matters, but there's been a lot of discussion about the concept and the area and it being a community. And surely there was some aspirational statements made by the owners present, on appearance and aesthetic. So I'm hoping that we apply the typical high standards that this community has come to expect.
Yes, and maybe I will add to this year's statement, the 5-year official community plan review that we intend to undertake or start the process sometime this year. That is a top priority for that OCP review. It's a very keen look at our design guidelines. That is probably one of the main focus where we know we can improve upon design guidelines. So it is high on the list of priorities from staff on the improvements that can be had on the official community plan going forward is clearer, more defined design guidelines going forward. So it is absolutely in our radar. It's in the scope of work of a larger project.
Sure. And I think we can all agree that our design guidelines are slowly falling behind, like some of our other larger reports that we're waiting on. We've heard a lot and from multiple residents multiple times about the Byzantine intersection. And I just wonder if we can hear from engineering or whomever that what the potential is there, or what the expectation on the part of our engineering staff would be as that unfolds. I guess, I understand it's early stages, but surely you've turned your minds to this cross section.
Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Jansen, through the chair. We haven't done any specific design work for this, but it's anticipated that we're definitely going to formalize that intersection, likely with a signalization. There may for sure be an additional left-hand turn lane to get onto Byzantine off of Latoria or into that development again off of Latoria. So we definitely could see an additional lane being added somewhere in that mix. The address itself, by making Byzantine being the only access, it allows less crossings for the creek. So then expand those internal networks. So that'll help significantly. It'd be difficult to put a roundabout on there just from a land acquiring. You generally need, probably 35 to 40 meter right away to even get a single lane roundabout in there. So it's not likely to get a roundabout. So it'd be anticipated it would be some kind of signal that would progress through there for sure.
And I think it's noteworthy. There has been discussion about sort of when that might be delivered as well. I guess my concern would be as this unfolds and we start going down this road and certain developments kick off, but other ones don't. I mean, I think the community would appreciate an early intervention at that intersection as opposed to waiting, for the final door to be built.
Yeah, certainly we're starting the transportation master plan process as well, as an ancillary project to these projects. So I would anticipate that this kind of conversation will be happening then as well, and that might elevate that project to a little higher standard. At this time, it's not projected to be a signalized intersection as current development stands.
Right.
But certainly this would be a driver for a signal to happen sooner rather than later if these developments went forward.
And
sooner.
that stretch is captured in the DCC program, is it
That's
not?
correct.
Yeah, thank you. There's been discussion around sewer capacity, and I know it comes up on a quasi-regular basis, and I just wonder if someone can speak to that with some knowledge as far as where we're at, where we might end up if this unfolds as anticipated, and the number of doors and what have you. And with the knowledge that I think we're within 10 years, I heard of a new plant being needed across the region. So
Certainly, we are actually in the process now of working with council with regards to sewer expectations in the future. It's anticipated right now that we know we're going to reach our levels. Really, development will be the driver of when we reach those levels. Our capacity within the CRD is minimal compared to the entire capacity of the plant itself. The first phase that should occur sometime late 30s, early 40s will be an additional expansion on the existing treatment plant. After that period, we'll then move on and they'll look for alternatives, whether it's out on the West Shore or a plant somewhere else that'll feed this. They haven't got that plan, or if they do, they haven't given that to us publicly. Our allocation, if we're to exceed it prior to any of those other plant works, is just a matter of figuring out the financial consequences with the CRD. They haven't got a template for every megaliter is X, but that would be worked out as we needed it. So the plant capacity is there for us to take. And if we're driving that expansion as well as other communities like Langford, Victoria, and Sanders that are significantly bigger ass than us, then that would just happen sooner. So it's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when. So that capacity can be expanded as needed by the CRD.
thank you. Bonus densities. I mean, there's material in here about bonus density. Clearly, there's some kind of bonus. I mean, what form does that take on behalf of the community, or can it take? It's not really specified in here, other than I see the bonus density up to 6 stories.
Yes, so in light of the new Bill 44, 47, 46, Bill 16, and the new legislations, every time that a municipality wants to explore bonus density, we are required to do a feasibility study to understand the threshold. So what a bonus density strategy gives us is a base density threshold of like you can build this much with no implications of an amenity, but every square meter that you go above that threshold or number of stories that you go above that threshold, then we want to gain something specific. And so the bonus density framework is what the province would call a more transparent way of negotiating amenities for your community, because you are stipulating what each incremental increase to density is gaining you. And I think for us to explore whether there is an opportunity for bonus density here, we need to do a little bit of a land economics and investigate that possibility. We're not saying that a bonus density framework would work here. We're just saying we want to take that opportunity to explore if some of these, let's say, affordable housing, like normally what we do currently, we do an ad hoc negotiation through a development agreement. And that's what the province wants to move us away from, kind of doing ad hoc negotiation on a zoning by zoning basis. So we are just through these recommendation, we ask him for permission to explore the possibility of a framework that establishes those thresholds and gives us certainty about the ask. It may be that there's not enough density or height to leverage some of those items, and I think we would learn something about the foundations of economics on these lands. But it will be an insight that comes from a third party working for the city, helping us understand what we can ask, what is realistic. We want to develop a plan that is buildable. We want to see it support change if that's where council and the community want to go.
I think this community is quite sensitive to unfinished projects historically. So yes, I appreciate that. Now, I thought our earlier versions talked up to 8 stories. Is that, and I think we heard from one of the owners, like, is that off the table now, or we dialed that back, or could that be part of the future bonus densities? Okay, thank you.
Yeah, I think what the revised concept that we're presenting now is the one that is really based on the community feedback, where we thought we are striking the right balance of what we heard, the height, the comfort level of the community around some of what we presented before. And I think now that we take it and do a little bit more of a technical exercise, we can come back to committee and council and really let you know what's realistic. We're trying to strike the balance and summarize the feedback of the community, but we may not be able to achieve it all. And I think we want to be transparent with what we heard from the community, what we think is supportable in the ranges of 4 to 6 stories that were what we heard could still achieve diversity of housing and the opinion of some residents. But now we need to vet that through a land economics.
Okay.
Does that give enough density for us to ask for park, for affordable
Thank you.
housing, for senior housing, for 3+ bedrooms, plus? So a little bit more technical work now to vet.
So
the
that's
vision.
great, and I appreciate that, because you're right. In my mind, if I'd hate to think we miss an opportunity to say, I know some members of this council are quite passionate about daycares. So a public daycare on a floor in a building in exchange for, an additional floor of units. I don't think that's a hard sell. So I'll leave that to you and your staff. And the last question I'll wrap up, Mr. Chair, is a parks plan. Is that a parks plan for this area? Will there be a standalone parks plan for this entire zone?
So we have an existing parks plan for the city of Colwood, and we are actually actualizing portions of the mountain to beach trail along the riparian area as a walking path that would be kind of connecting you from Havenwood all the way down, with a vision that it will eventually take you down to the beachlands. We don't have a parks plan specifically for this location, only because we do see it connecting. The mandate and the vision is coming from the City of Colwood's Park Master Plan, and that Parks Master Plan in due time will need a revision and update, but we think that there's enough policy existing to guide the development here.
Perfect. So there's congruity with the overall parks plan for the community. Yeah. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Looking to the rest of the committee for any questions at all? Mr. Perry? You go, sir.
Thank you very much. One of the reasonable concerns that was brought forward by one of the member of the publics was the floodplain mapping, knowing that this area is in a significant depression, any notable weather event of which we're getting more and more notable environmental events happening of late could obviously have very large impacts. So I would, of course, just want to echo that particular concern and ensure that we are confident in the water management plan for that area. as it will handle a lot from a lot of the neighboring areas. The other point that I wanted to tie a loose end on was the concern from the developer around a new requirement. I'm not sure I personally picked up on us speaking to that new requirement, and so I was just wanting to make sure that we were able to speak to that concern if we have answers at this point.
Thank you, Committee Member Perry, and through the chair. So yes, I think the concern that we heard from the developer was around the financial feasibility analysis piece. So that was direction from the province for if we are considering a density bonusing framework, we do have to test it out or retain a specialist to look at whether or not it is feasible and whether or not it makes sense on the land. So that will be part of the next scope of work. We'll be retaining that consultant to do that work for us. If it turns out that the financial or that density bonusing does not work here, then we will rethink the land use concept and come back with revisions and before we bring forward an area plan.
Thank you very much. And so for that particular area, I think there's been a lot of success with the existing multi-use or mixed use rather zoning and surrounding residential, and the growth of this area is clear that it's been going to be a lovely area for people to work within, live within, and be able to walk from amenity to amenity. So I certainly want to endorse the commentary from Councillor Jansen that any bonus density height grants in the form of additional commercial and public amenities is in our best interest to keep people in the area that they live and work, and reducing the transportation necessity while also providing ample transportation opportunities. So the final comment that I have here is today's recommendation is really just providing direction or asking council to provide direction to build out a plan and provide some good guidelines to the people who want to build in this area. This is not an endorsement to break soil, but rather make sure that we're all in an agreement as to the direction of this area. And so with that, I'd like to conclude my commentary. And if there's no one else, I want to make a motion to accept the staff recommendation.
Mr. Perry, I'll come back to you in just a moment to make that motion if you don't mind. Are there any other comments prior to motion from Mr. Perry? I'll just speak to it really quickly. I think from my perspective, there's a lot of outstanding questions still, but I know when this first came forward to this council, it was 13 parcels of land kind of all viewed independently with an idea that we were going to develop there. And I know the pushback from myself and from others was, can we find a way to look at this as more of a master planned area, and see it as more than 13 independent parcels and see it as a community, as a kind of village. And that required the landowners, the other stakeholders to communicate with each other to try to find some alignment, and for city staff to pursue that kind of direction with them. Now, I understand a concept is a concept, and my concern, probably echoed by Councillor Jansen there or spoke to him is that, you things can evolve in piecemeal kind of ways, and a developer changes their mind part way, cash gets low, whatever it is, and you end up with unfinished, pieces, and the vision changes, right? We change the zoning, and I hate to go back to it, but it's the most relevant example for me is within Royal Bay, in the center of Royal Bay, in the heart of the community, kitty corner to the commons retail area, it was to be a community hub, and it was going to be low level and a gathering place for the community. It was zoned as such, and now it's just an apartment building. Sure, they're valuable homes, but it fundamentally changed the core of that community. So my concern is just when we develop this plan, what protections will we have to realize a vision? I see the walkway up or the pathway up the north-south creek connector there, and what that could be utilizing parks, DCCs and things to make that, really an attractive component and revitalize Latoria Creek all the way through right up to Havenwood. So there is some good that can come out of it. There's a lot of tree canopy that could be retained if we can find a way. But when I look at that map, I say, okay, what's the trade-off? If I'm a property owner And I'm looking at that land use concept, and my little sliver, my one of those 13 is half covered in trees and partially in the riparian area. How do I make it work? And I don't have the answers to that, and I don't know if we have the answers to that, but I know that's where we have to get to. The other concern I have probably does echo that of the community. The number one issue is transportation and traffic. That's an issue everywhere. It's no secret I'm not a proponent of widening Latoria to 4 lanes. I don't believe that is supported by traffic modeling. It's not supported by the community. I think 3 lanes is reasonable, or turn lanes, as Mr. Rosenberg spoke to. But I really wonder about, the investment we've made in this massive 2-lane roundabout, which is wonderful. It works great, only to then add another entry point, a couple 100 meters away. I am glad to see we removed the piece onto Latoria. That would have done the same thing. So that was less than ideal. But, Councillor Jansen brought it up about the Byzantin entry point. We heard from staff that there isn't land really there to do a roundabout. But I would appreciate the resident from the region who spoke up about that. I think, we need to maybe really think outside the box and see what we can do to have continuation. If we're going to spend that much money on a roundabout in one spot, it really seems to work against us to then simply start adding 4-way stops and traffic lights and everything all the way down. So I'd like to see traffic modeling in that area to understand what's there. I know Olympic View will eventually connect through to the Byzantin area. What impact will that have? Is there a way to expedite that, working with Peter and the owners of Olympic View? A lot of unanswered questions, but I think at this point, I like where we've netted out in terms of sort of a master plan view. So I will support a motion if Mr. Perry wants to put it forward. But a lot of discussion still to happen. Thank you.
At this point, I'd like to motion that we accept staff recommendation to direct staff to develop a plan for the area.
Thank you, Mr. Perry. That's option 1. Any discussion, motivation on that? Seeing none, I will call the question. All those in favor? That's unanimous. Thank you. With that done, then we move to item 6, the easy one, adjournment. If I have a motion to adjourn. I have a motion. There we go. All those in favor? Passes by a slim majority. Thank you, everyone. And thank you to the folks who came out this evening. Appreciate it. Thank you very much. Thanks, staff.